If you were drafting today, what would you do different? How late would Corbin Carroll drop? Who would go first? How early would Ranger Suarez go? We attempt to answer those questions a lot more with last night's Yahoo Friends and Family Draft, which we'll discuss next on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm Jeff Erickson here with Fred Zinkie. As always, we are brought to you by Prize Picks and Vivid Seats. Fred, we did the second chance draft, if you will, the what would I do different draft, the FOMO draft, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of different ways we could describe it. Did the Yahoo Friends and Family Draft yesterday. Fun draft. Fun to kind of see if we could address things a little differently.
Absolutely. I thought it was, you know what, I don't think this was the plan going into the year. Scott Pianowski organizes this league, and I don't know. I don't know if Scott had this plan all along. I don't think he did, but anyways, it's a really interesting idea for us to draft 1 month into the season just to see, for this season with stats, just so everyone's clear, with stats counting starting today. So we drafted last night. Stats start counting today. It's a roto league. It's 13 teams. So pretty standard. So for us to do a draft now, stats going forward, and see where you would draft players for the rest of this year. Because I know like later in August, they'll start running drafts, early 2025 drafts and things. But this is a cool one because it was, right, what you do for the rest of this year.
Yeah, exactly. And, yeah, it's too bad in some cases that last night didn't count. I had Bryce Miller going yesterday, for instance, there, but that's okay because there'll be plenty other good and bad moments. But I thought it was interesting. I thought there were some. The one I was most interested in was your guy in labor, Corbin Carroll. Off to a miserable start now, batting 7th in the order. Could drop to 9th for all we know, but isn't hitting for any sort of power. A lot of rumblings about the shoulder. How much was he going to drop? And he dropped. He dropped out of the first round, almost out of the second round. Pick 25 to Dalton Del Don, 2.12 out of 13. I personally would not have even taken in the top 3 rounds, but because I think the shoulder is real. I think that's a real problem for him.
Yeah, I wouldn't have taken him anywhere because I have so many shares of Corbin Carroll and they're all going so poorly that that there's no way I was exposing myself to more shares of him. So I thought Dalton at pick 25, I even thought that was aggressive, to expect him to turn around and be a top 25 player the rest of the way. Like I said, I thought that was, he went right before Adolis Garcia. Jose Altuve went shortly after that. I mean, we did see Rafael Devers, who's also off to a miserable start, go shortly after, and Corey Seager, who's also off to a miserable start, go shortly after Carroll. But Carroll's different in the sense of there is this no elephant in the room shoulder injury. And then there's also a limited sample size of success for Carroll in comparison to Devers and Seager.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So let's just kind of go through some of these things here while we watch Jack Flaherty have one of the best revenge games of all time while we're talking here. It's 12 Ks through 5 innings so far. Struck out the first 7 batters. But first question is, who's the number 1 pick? And the answer was not Ronald Acuna Jr. It was not, obviously not Spencer Strider, obviously, but it wasn't who you'd think. It was, if you're paying attention to rankings and all that, what they've done so far, maybe it's not a surprise, but Mookie Betts, second short, outfield eligible, having the best season so far. According to RotoWire's earned auction value tools there, and was a first round pick anyhow. So I don't, I'm not shocked that he went first overall.
No, me neither. I still think with just counting stats going forward, I probably would have taken Acuna, but I have no problem. When I thought about it, so you were able to do a KDS, or you could just leave it up to chance. Scott sent us out that email. I just left it up to chance. I think
so did I.
Yeah, I think a lot of people did, because we hadn't done the same kind of research for this one that you would have for a March draft, and because the bullets are flying and everything's changing all the time. That made it really fun. But yeah, I felt like the options for first pick were Acuna, obviously Betts. Elly, if you want to take Elly, that was fine. So when I'm looking at the earned auction value calculator on RotoWire, I see Elly first and then Betts second. And then I thought Bobby Witt would also be a fair pick at number 1, in the sense of he's in the top 10 on the earned auction value calculator and was picked higher than Betts and Elly before the season. So, and Betts has this ridiculous 377 average that's, not going to sustain. That's part of the reason he's up so high. And so anyways, I thought those 4 players were the 4 options. They did not go in the top 4. Elly slipped to 5th, but anyways, no, I have no issue with Betts. I think I would have taken Acuna, and then I think I might have taken Witt second.
Okay.
I think I might have taken Elly third too. I might have pushed Betts all the way to 4th, but maybe I'm just got to learn a lesson on Betts. The Elly was really interesting. I mean, no, I think I would put Betts third. I didn't have it picked that high. I picked 8th.
So I think I can get behind the Betts pick. And by the way, I think I looked at their values yesterday, and Betts was ahead of Elly before Elly homered yesterday.
Okay.
To give him 8 now. And that's the thing. Betts only has 6 homers, but 29 runs scored. You mentioned the average, but he's always going to have a good average, right? It's not like this is some fluke. There's some volatility there. He's a good hitter, period.
Yeah, his average is going to come down about 70 points. Let's say he hits 307, right? Going forward. Like, it's probably going to be something like that. He's hitting 377 right now. But Elly's average is 280, and his average, we don't know if he can keep 280 up even for Elly. So he might hit 250 or something, 260 the rest of the way.
Let's talk a little bit more about Elly here, because I really hate talking about Elly De La Cruz. I never do it ever. But Elly De La Cruz went at 1.5. I think Dalton was talking about taking him at 2 and then didn't, if I recall correctly, and P&I was giving him a hard time about that. I need to get the full background on that. But the point being is Elly De La Cruz went at 1.5 instead. All draft season long, we were talking about, how can you go in the second round? That's too soon. And now we're talking about top 5. And I can get behind it too. The things I like about Elly De La Cruz is after that initial stretch at the start of the season, he's not striking out the same as he was earlier. That's the thing I really like the most. Well, no, that's not true. I like everything else the most. I like the power. I like the stolen bases. I like everything. The only thing is he is still going to strike out a ton, but it's less than last year now. At one point he was striking out 41% of the time. He's now down to 30.5%. If you look at it from that standpoint, it's hard not to fall in love with everything else he's doing too. And we haven't even had hot weather in Cincinnati yet.
It's true. Definitely looks like, and I was not into Elly at all. And I think he even said when he got off to a slow start with the first week that, maybe these people who took Elly in round 2 were foolish. But yeah, his strikeout rate and Acuna's strikeout rate. So I just sorted MLB leaders by steals, and they're 1-2. But Elly's ahead by 5. But their strikeouts rates and their walk rates are virtually identical so far this year. So I know Acuna's not off to his best start, but just to show where Elly's at, like he and Acuna have almost the same strikeout and walk rates.
Yep, that's
so
right.
far this year. So almost the same runs scored. Just Elly's had a little more stolen bases and a lot more power. So anyways, I thought he was, I was excited. Well, when I saw he was picking 8th, I was like, I'm highly unlikely to get Elly. And sure enough, I did.
Yeah. 8th is a fun spot. I wouldn't mind doing that there. You did pick 8th. I got 11th out of 13. Would have been like my 11th choice as it turns out, but you ended up going with the pitcher, and this is the start of a theme. You went Corbin Burnes at 1.8. I don't really remember you taking first round pitchers earlier on. Did you consciously say I'm going to go in taking pitchers early on, or was this a kind of I want to try to see how it works out, or a reaction to having the pitcher pool winnowed a little bit so far with all the injuries?
Yeah, kind of the last thing. So if I had picked in the top 5 or 6, like Betts, Witt, Acuna, Ohtani, who we haven't mentioned, De La Cruz, Tucker, I think I would have taken any of them. I might have taken Soto 7th. He went 7th to DJ Short. But then after that, I felt like there was a bit of a drop off, just in the sense of Tatis hasn't been awesome so far. Julio Rodriguez hasn't been awesome so far. I think I would have taken Gunnar Henderson maybe next, who you took at 11. If I was going to take a hitter, he has been awesome so far, but that's a big jump from where he was in draft season for sure. So anyways, my thought on the pitching, and I started with a lot of pitchers, was we're past the 2 benchmarks where the majority of pitcher like the wave of pitcher injuries. So they're early spring training and early in the season. So we're past both of those. There are going to be more pitcher injuries for sure, but we're through that. And we're also through those initial starts where if a pitcher just, like Joe Musgrove, for example, where if a pitcher just doesn't seem right, whether they can't strike anyone out or whether the velocity's down or something, like we're kind of through those things as well. So I feel like maybe we've hit a point in the season where pitching is like, you can kind of identify which pitchers are at the outset of a really good season. And I decided, because we do know that pitching's risky, but when it hits, it's really valuable. So I decided to take some shots and draft a lot of pitchers at the beginning of the draft. We'll see how it goes.
Well,
something different. I wouldn't do this in the middle of March.
And the thing is, the first month of the season is when you usually get the most pitching injuries. First month of spring training and then the first month of the season, the two biggest times. So now that you've kind of emerged through that, I can see it a little bit. On the flip side, my best teams are the ones where I focused on offense so far at the start of drafts. And I feel like that seems to be more of a winning formula for me. Maybe it's because all those pitcher injuries that have happened already, but and maybe I'm kind of selling myself short just a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. As you alluded to, I did take Gunnar Henderson at 1.11 all draft season. I've been saying how, I hate not having Gunnar Henderson in the main event. I hate having very little of them at all. As a matter of fact, well, did I overcorrect by taking him at 1 point? It doesn't sound like you think I overcorrected by taking him at 111.
Oh, no, not at all. I think I've been pretty high on this Orioles lineup. I really think the Orioles' ability, you were talking with Scott on Sunday night about how the Orioles brought up Hunter Kierstead and just don't play him, but they don't have to because they have so many good players through all the spots that Kierstead can play. They could use one more good hitting infielder right now because Jackson Holiday didn't work out right away. But I just think that lineup is going to be really good all year. Gunnar Henderson is like, he's hitting 289. He's got a 311 BABIP, so the average seems pretty sustainable.
Right.
He strikes out a fair amount, but so we'll see. But anyways, power, he's stealing bases at a higher rate. I don't know. I think this could be, the outset of a breakout season. So no, I think picking him in the first round, like I think he's going to be a first rounder next year. So I think it was totally fine.
Yeah, I do too.
But like I said, I might have gone even a little. I might have taken him at 8. I probably would have thought about him or Julio Rodriguez. Rodriguez would be tough to pass up at some point. Like he went 10th, right before you picked. Like, man, like he was going second and third in preseason drafts. We're only a month in. He got off to a slow start last year and still had a great season. So, I would have had a hard time passing up. It would have been Julio or Henderson, I think, for me.
Yeah, and I was debating Gunnar versus Freddie Freeman because you just know the super high floor is there. You hard to go wrong there too. But I ended up going with Gunnar instead. Rest of the first round. So just to recap there. And first of all, a couple of people chiming in here. Uncle Ted said he would go CJ Abrams with the 1.1. PJ says that Acuna at third is an overcorrection. He's totally about to bounce back, or totally about to explode. I wouldn't say bounce back, about to explode. And he's already gotten 14 stolen bases. So despite the one, only 6 barrels and, only 1 home run so far, he's doing other things. It's still huge. And you really think, I see the logic in taking Acuna 1.1. You suggested you would have thought about that too. So not exactly like we're in disagreement here. Third overall, still not bad, by the way. I mean, and neither of us could do anything about it either, by the way. So that was the other thing. Rest of the first round. So Mookie Betts went 1.1, Bobby Witt Jr. 1.2, Acuna 1.3, Shohei Ohtani 1.4, batter. Obviously, but it's kind of funny. Someone later in the draft saw Shohei Ohtani before they saw pitcher next to it there and got all excited. Elly De La Cruz 1.5 to Jorge Martin, excuse me. Kyle Tucker 1.6, having a wonderful year among the chaos of the Astros. Jose Abreu just got sent down, by the way. We won't do a hot take segment on that. Just realize you can cut him. Juan Soto, 1.7. Corbin Burnes, 1.8. Fernando Tatis Jr., 1.9. Julio Rodriguez, 1.10. Gunnar Henderson, 111. Freddie Freeman, 112. And Aaron Judge, 113 in his 13-team draft. Honestly, the only 2 interlopers from before the start of the season to now in the first round are Elly. And I even saw him go in the first round in a couple of drafts, including my main event, and Gunnar Henderson, who I'm the outlier. I'm that guy. I'm Mosley. But anyways, so there you go. All right. Before we move on to the second round, quick note from our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states across the country. Prize Picks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. You can just pick more or less on 2-player stats and watch the winnings roll in. You can do it in baseball, basketball, you name it. Earlier today, they had a Jarrett Allen projection that at 13.5 points. I'm on that as for the more. That's the Cleveland Magic game there. They do baseball, they do golf, you name it, they got it covered there. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. You can also use RotoWire's Picks tool to help you do well in Prize Picks as well. So check that out. Download the app today and use code ROTOPOD for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's promo code ROTOPOD for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Welcome back to the podcast. Jeff Erickson here with Fred Zinkie. We both participated in the 13-team Yahoo Friends and Family Draft yesterday. That's right, yesterday. Challenging our assumptions from the start of the season, correcting errors, filling in that FOMO, and sometimes just taking advantage of bargains as well. We covered the first round. Second round, more familiar names. Zach Wheeler, the second pitcher, but I saw him going at the end of first rounds in a lot of NFBC drafts, and I'm not surprised he went there. Trey Turner went 1.2 or 2.2. I went with Yordan Alvarez at 2.3. Another Astro, another Oasis in a sea of bad players, but I think the Astros offense is still going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, well, and you look at Altuve went in the first pick of round 3, so pick 27. So there's 3 Astros right there in the top 30. You don't see that often for a team with that record. But I think the top part of that lineup is doing fine. The problem has been pitching, and the problem has been some players down the lineup. Chas McCormick, for example, was off to a really poor start this year, and Abreu, who was off to a dismal start.
Exactly. I think there is, and this is where I think you start to see some variance here. CJ Abrams moved up about a round to 2.5 to Andy Barron's. Tarik Skubal went to you at 2.6. I'm old enough to remember when people were questioning Tarik Skubal going at the end of the second round. Now he's the third pitcher taken.
Yeah, off to a great start on the RotoWire earned auction value calculator. He's the second most valuable pitcher so far this year, $1 ahead of Tyler Glasnow, who went 1 pick after him. I'll be interested to see how many innings I get. Was my one hesitation on him was, I've already missed the first 6 starts, and what will his workload be like this season? But anyways, I decided just to get good pitching. It was interesting. I didn't know. So Glasnow is day-to-day right now. I considered him next, but obviously long injury history, and he's day-to-day. And then you look at, I would have taken Zach Wheeler in a heartbeat, but he went a few picks before me. And then there weren't many other pitchers that I was really considering. There's lots of pitchers I like, but there weren't many I was considering in round 2. So Skubal, because I had decided I was going to start with pitching, so I took him. If I was really setting out a draft list right now, there aren't many pitchers that I like at the very top of the draft. Skubal, I was fine with, but there wasn't much competition. Luis Castillo's not off to an awesome start. George Kirby, Gosman, they're fine. But I took Freddy Peralta in the very next round, who I think was about the fifth pitcher or so off the board, maybe even fifth pitcher off the board. So everyone else was not into early pitchers at all. I was the one outlier taking early pitchers. Everyone else was doing the standard hitter. Either 2 hitters in the top 3 rounds or 3 hitters.
Yeah, and I did 2 myself. I thought the hitters started to get picked over pretty quickly, to be honest.
They did. Well, when they go after Glasnow went in the middle of round 2, we went a full round before another pitcher was taken.
But yet, I still saw comments in the chat from Scott saying that you were, kind of eviscerating his queue with remaining aces. My argument was that you take the top 2 pitchers off the top and Strider and Cole. Yep. There's not as much separation between the next few tiers for that matter. So why why draft an early one?
So here's an interesting question that I thought of after our draft. So you're right. We only had in the top 30, let's just say 30, because that's main event style. So in the top 30, we only had four pitchers drafted.
Mhm.
Let's say Strider and Cole were ruled out for the season at Christmas. How many pitchers would have gone in the top 30 in the main event? More than four.
Well, the main event is different than every other format
I
because of the
guess.
overall
But you know
context
what I
and
mean? Like,
because
how
of the
many would have
people
held an
drafting
ADP
in
in
it.
the? Yeah, I just wondered how many would have had an ADP. It was an interesting question. I don't actually know the answer, but I thought more than four.
So it was like 8 or 9 weren't there in the main. So
Mhm.
I'd
Yeah,
probably say 6. Take off 2.
yeah. Yeah. Anyways, this room just didn't, and maybe it's because of the small. I wondered as I was drafting, and I was wondering if I was falling victim to this too. Is it the small sample sizes with pitchers early in the season? Because I'm backing off, for example, Luis Castillo, who's been worth $1 so far, but
Mhm.
does have 42 strikeouts in 34 and two thirds innings. Like, was I backing off of him because he was a second round pick? Like he should have
Right.
probably been picked higher, but we're backing off because the ratios aren't great. But it's like really early in the season and everything else looks fine. Were we backing off of George Kirby too much? Like he went all the way till pick 38.
312. One pick after I took his teammate Logan Gilbert, which was one pick after Luis Castillo.
Right. So George Kirby's falling. Is that just because of the 4.18 ERA, which is mostly from one start? Because the whip's 111, the strikeout rate's really good. Like
Oh,
he was the
he was in
same
my
guy
queue.
who was going in the second round
I
in
was
March.
basically taking a Seattle pitcher there.
Hmm.
And whether you want to say Kirby is better than Gilbert, it might be. I might be wrong about that. I might be guilty of recency bias a little bit. Uh, I like them equally.
Right. I wondered if we were just punishing them. So, for example, Francisco Lindor went ahead of guys like Castillo and Kirby. Um, in and Francisco Lindor is off to a really slow start. Devers went ahead of those guys. He's off to a really slow start. We mentioned Corbin Carroll. I don't know. I wondered if we punished the pitchers who were off to slow starts even more than the hitters. Maybe not though, because we can get to these. But like some of the, for example, Vladdy Guerrero and Bo Bichette both fell really far
Yeah, we'll
in
get
our
to
draft.
those. I want to
Yeah,
before we do that though.
yeah,
I kind of hinted at this earlier, but Corbin Carroll, we got to talk him.
yeah.
He went 212, picked 25 overall. I think that was like that. That was one of like the whole point of like doing this is looking for guys like that. And I thought, okay, where does the league value Corbin Carroll? And for me, it's later. We kind of hinted at this. It's later than where he went, but I just think the shoulder problem is a real problem. I think that's why he's slumping so badly.
Yeah, it's interesting because we think that, but we don't really have anything. Like they aren't saying that at all. He's not saying that at all. But you're right. Like he's been awful. I recommended selling low on him a week ago in a Yahoo article, and I find the idea of selling low a really interesting one. Like it's easy to do when I write those articles. It's easy to do the trade articles. It's easy to do the buy lows, and it's easy to do the sell highs. The sell lows and the buy highs are the really interesting ones because
Mm-hmm.
selling low on Carroll, like you would have got more a week ago than you would get right now. So in his last 8 games, he's 2 for 29. Um, like things are bottoming out even worse for him. Like he's off to a terrible start, but it's the worst is recently.
So what I want to ask is, I know I see some comments in the chat saying they don't believe it's the shoulder. If you don't think it's the shoulder, why do you think Corbin Carroll is struggling so much? Is it just variance? Because I don't think that's true. I just look at like the batted ball data is terrible with him.
That's it. Yeah, it's the average exit velocity right now is what's been terrible. Like his average exit velocity last year was an even 90 miles an hour, and it's 83.5 so far this year. So he's not hitting the ball hard at all. It's not really a strikeout rate problem. His strikeout rate's lower than last year. The walk rate's higher. Like those things are fine. It's the batted ball data that's even the line drive, ground ball, fly ball rate with him are all pretty similar. He's actually just not barreling the ball. Like he's not hitting the ball hard.
Yeah.
So that would make you think maybe shoulder, but we have no real proof on that other than just these like trying to connect dots and
So
put two and two together and come up with 4.
As always, I like to go to your site, Yahoo, and look at some of the trades that have happened involving Corbin Carroll so far. And these are just 1-for-1 trades. I just like doing the 1-for-1s when I kind of look for, kind of gauging his value. You tell me which side of these you'd like. Corbin Carroll straight up for Rafael Devers.
Carroll.
Corbin Carroll straight up for Michael Harris.
Harris.
Harris went before Carroll, by the way. He went in the second round of our draft.
That one's not close for me. Harris looks healthy and good. I'm in. Harris.
Yeah. Corbin Carroll straight up for Manny Machado.
Now Manny's off to like not a great start, and his floor is way lower. I'll say Carroll.
Yeah, I think I would too. Corbin Carroll for Anthony Volpe.
Carroll. Yeah. I like Volpe as a breakout this year for sure. He's off to a good start, but Carroll was a top 5 pick just a month ago. I think I got to go Carroll.
Yeah.
As frustrated as I am with Carroll having on multiple teams. Like I said, like I was basically completely closed to drafting him last night because I already have a lot of shares. But if I took that out of the equation, I'll take Carroll over Volpe.
So most of these, by the way, are like 90 cents on the dollar trades. They're not pennies on the dollar. They're
the Machado, he was more like a 5th round pick. So that one may be more like 70 cents or so on the dollar. But
yeah, maybe so. So, but yeah. And I guess that's just a pretty good litmus test. We don't think he's irreparably done. It's just that we think he should be discounted. That's all. If that's the case, I think I might take the other side of those, except for Machado, who I just don't see having the running, upside. Thus, he can't possibly get, he can't match the fantasy ceiling there. It'd be very difficult to do so for him. So
I might take Devers too. The more I think about it, like,
yeah,
I think I might swayed by him having a little bit of injury at the start of the year too.
Well, he's had 3 different things. That's the thing about Devers. It's the shoulder, it's the knee, and he got checked for a concussion on that collision too. I think those could be ongoing. Actually, I don't know. I think I like Volpe and Harris the best. Harris I like the most. But yeah, Carroll can be so good.
Devers,
but
yeah.
I just
Volpe is just so the Volpe one is really cool because it's like a massive swing in both directions. Like you're taking a first round guy for, I forget what Volpe was, but let's say he was like a 8th round guy or something before the season, 9th round guy. So Volpe, by the way, went in round 5 for us last night. So he's moved up.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. Carroll. But even he made it all the way to round 5. So if you're taking Volpe, you're saying you wouldn't have taken Carroll basically in the first 5 rounds.
That's about where I'm at. Although
I get it.
Yeah. I really think it is the shoulder, even though they aren't talking about it that much. I think it's still a thing. I see the batted ball stuff is what scares me.
Yep.
I mean, he's just not hitting the ball with authority. If you're hitting lineouts, things of that nature, and he's just running unlucky, okay, then I'm on board. Let's go first round. But I think there's really something there. And when there's really something there, it's not just a tiny little incremental drop off. It's a big drop.
Yeah, I thought foolishly, I thought maybe going into the season that if the shoulder was an issue at all, it would just impact his ability to hit home runs, but maybe he could still hit 275 and steal bases. Just be your prototypical leadoff hitter. Hit 275, steal 50 bases, maybe only hits a dozen home runs. That was the downside of him. I was hoping that wasn't the case. And he hit 25 home runs, but maybe he hits a dozen home runs. But this is where, if this is the shoulder, it's impacting just his ability to collect singles.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I want the extra base hits. I want some authority there. And that's the thing that kind of bothers me. Because the speed's still ever present, and that's going to at least get you through. But man, you're not betting on a 0 in power there. And that's the thing that's really kind of a problem there. Then again, I think if you have Carroll, it's going to be hard to commit to pulling the trigger on any sort of deal. Most people aren't that sick of him yet. Right. And you drafted him, you believed in him for a reason. So thus it's going to be very difficult to pull that off. So anyways, this is April 30th. Let's give it a couple more weeks, maybe before I think if you have Corbin Carroll, I wouldn't try to get what you can and get out of the Corbin Carroll business just yet. Wait for it to warm up a little bit more, before really determining that. I just think there is a non-zero risk that it is something significant with the shoulder and that he's trying to play through it. So that's all I kind of getting at there. Let's go through the second round real quick, and then we'll cover the third and maybe and some our selected picks otherwise in detail. So second round went Zach Wheeler, Trey Turner, Yordan Alvarez, Austin Riley, CJ Abrams 2.5, Skubal, which you took, Tyler Glasnow, as you alluded to, Michael Harris, Matt Olson, low-key having a terrible year in his own right so far. Bryce Harper, Jose Ramirez, Corbin Carroll, and Adolis Garcia. We should talk Garcia real quick because I don't. We need to put some respect on this man's name. Man, he just every year I feel like we are like, oh well, the strikeout rate's bad. He's not a sabermetrically friendly player, and then we look up and he's killing it for his fantasy managers again.
Yeah, in fact, if I was to switch a pick, I had the plan to go really heavy pitching at the beginning. If I was going to switch one, I might have taken Garcia in the middle around 10 instead of Skubal. You're right. Every year, I think we're done with that now, maybe a bit as an industry, although he could go even higher next year. We'll see. But this year, the big difference is he's hitting 291. It's early. We'll see where it goes. But typically, he was more of a 245 hitter in his career going into this year. Well, his career 246. So, right. But the power from him seems undeniable. Like he's going to be a 35 to 40 homer player. And he's got 4 steals already this year, only 9 last year, but we've already seen a 25 and a 16 steal season from him. So it wouldn't be shocking to get 20 steals. Like if he hits this year, let's say 37 homers and steals 20 bases, like the average can be 250 or 290. That just parses out whether he's like a top 10 hitter or top 2 hitter or something like that. Really, like, yeah, he's amazing. He's awesome. And like I said, I think he should have gone higher in this draft. I would have taken him over Carroll for sure, Bryce Harper, some players like that. I think we're still not giving him probably enough respect.
Yeah. So, we're giving it to him right now, right here and there. That takes care of it. We're good. We're good now. No, just kidding. So, all right. Before we move on, quick note from our friends over at Vivid Seats. And I've used Vivid Seats before. I think they're excellent. Finally, baseball is back this MLB season. Knock it out of the park with Vivid Seats and score great tickets to the biggest games of the year. Every fastball, every home run, and every eye-popping play of your favorite team live and in person. Plus, with Vivid Seats rewards, you earn rewards with every single purchase. Just buy 10 tickets, then cash in your credit toward your free 11th ticket. Talk about an easy win. And here's a pro reward tip. When buying tickets for your whole group, buy them all, then split the bill after the fact and make progress towards your free 11th ticket even faster. From behind the dugout to the upper deck, Vivid Seats has great tickets for all the 2024 games that matter to you. Just visit vividseats.com or download the app today. Vivid Seats. Experience it live. See vividseats.com/rewards for terms and conditions. Also, we're on the Blue Wire Network. Here are their wonderful ads. Thank you, everybody, for your patience with that. We're breaking down yesterday's Yahoo Friends and Family second chance draft, if you will. And we've covered the first 2 rounds in detail. We're going to start picking up the pace a little bit more, looking at some of these picks. In the third round, Fred, you took Freddy Peralta, yet another pitcher. And then you took another one in the 4th round with Aaron Nola. What was your thinking behind those 2 picks?
Yeah, just trying to get aces. Like I said, I decided I was going to get I decided I was going to get 4 of the best pitchers in baseball, then just a lot of hitters who, have everyday jobs, are really good hitters, maybe aren't baseball superstars, but are good hitters. And we'll see. Like I went I've seen people have success with Dalton, who's in our draft. Dalton Del Don has had a lot of success over the years going heavy with pitchers. I'm interested in just the nuances of a late April draft and whether, because we're past these injuries, if I get full value from these pitchers, I think that I could win the pitching categories, and then we'll see what I could cobble together in the hitting categories.
All right. Very good. I went a different direction. Well, I did get Logan Gilbert here, and then I got a closer. I got my guy, Evan Phillips, who he's just the best ratios reliever in baseball the last 3 years. I may not get as many saves, but I did go early closer. I don't often go early closer, but I think in our format in particular, it rewards having good relievers. So I will take my closers earlier in this format, in this league in particular, than I will in other leagues.
I found the closers maybe the most surprising part of the draft for me. A few went early, but then they kind of hung around. Like, for example, I got Alexis Diaz in round 10, who's totally doing fine this year. Like, he had that one bad outing at the beginning, his first outing of the season, and since then he's fine. And he was kind of in a pocket. Like, a lot of closers went in like rounds 8, 9, 10. Like, a lot of them sat on the board. Ryan
Yeah.
Helsley went in round 8, for example. He's having a great year. Kirby Yates, who's taken over. Clay Holmes fell all the way to round 8. So I thought relievers would go earlier because we've seen, again, like the starters, like we've seen them now prove that they're off to good starts. They are their team's closer, etc.
Yes, they have the
There's
role. I think that's a
Yes.
huge one there too.
So there's less projecting with these guys, but they didn't. So I think that was just a room decision, where Edwin Diaz went at the end of round 3. You kind of took Evan Phillips at the start of round 4. So it's like, okay, here goes the run, and then it just didn't happen. After that, I think there were no relievers for basically 2 full rounds. Then Mason Miller went, and then like a trickle after that. Josh Hader about a round later. They just started trickling off, and then they kind of around 8, 9, 10, 11 started coming off the board more. But I think that was just a collective movement by the room. But I did think going into the draft that relievers would go earlier.
Yeah, and I was at near an end, not on an end, but near one. So I kind of have to make that decision without as much like knowledge of the room. And so I'm waiting 20 picks before my next pick. So that's one of the reasons I got a super solid guy too. So I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah.
Other noteworthy picks in the third round. You mentioned Francisco Lindor going 3-5. Not much of a haircut from where he went. It's actually where he went in the main event, basically pick 31. So not really a haircut at all when you think about it there. Mike Trout jumps right back up. He's stealing bases there, Fred.
I was shocked that Trout actually sat around this long. Trout was one of my most surprising ones because he's stealing bases. Like, if Trout stays healthy and if he steals 20 bases this year, he's already got 5. Like, if he steals 20, 25 bases this year, like, he could be a first round type player. I wasn't super in on Trout because I'm trying to stay disciplined. And my theory was going into the season that I don't trust his ability to stay healthy all year.
Mm-hmm.
A healthy April doesn't change that too much for me, although I was going to take him in round 3. So he went 2 picks before me. If Trout was available, Trout was at the top of my queue. Trout and Pete Alonso actually went right before I took Peralta, and I was scrambling a bit. I was surprised Alonso fell too because he's just being Pete Alonso. Like,
yep,
he fell a little bit further than he was during draft season, and I was like, well, he's already got 8 home runs. His average is respectable. Like, he's being what we're expecting. So, anyways, those were 2 guys who I was targeting in round 3, and that was, again, part of the reason that I was willing to do all these pitchers is I was kind of sniped on some of the hitters I was looking for. I thought Trout would have gone earlier because he's such a generational talent. He's off to such a good start. I thought one of us would have bought into him maybe in the late second, early third, but no one did. And that's the same owner. So I guess if he goes past the 5 owners, say at the end of the second, he just went past them again at the beginning of the third. But I thought he'd go ahead of Lindor, Seager, Simeon, Devers, who's off to a boring start. I thought Trout would go ahead of those guys. He's Mike Trout, and he's off to a great start.
Yep. So, let's moving on to the 4th round. Some notable results here. We talked about how our respective picks. Phillips for me, Nola for you. A lot of pitchers in this round. Pablo Lopez, Yamamoto, Cole Reagans, Kevin Gossman, Nola. Logan Webb goes in this round as well. Dylan Cease at the end of the round. Very heavy pitcher round. You can kind of see that. Hitters that did sneak in. Adley Rutschman, first catcher, still off the board. He goes at 4-7. Machado, a little higher than he did in main event draft, so he's starting to creep up. Jazz Chisholm, Xander Bogaerts early on. I was a little surprised at that one. Vlad Guerrero, as you alluded to. Vlad Guerrero, Bo Bichette. So both of those guys were hanging around. I took Anthony Volpe over Bo Bichette around later. I think there's something to be said about the hitting background in Toronto. I see all these Toronto hitters falling apart power-wise. Vlad's got 3 homers so far this year. Bichette has 1. Springer has 3. Dalton Varsho leads them in homers. He's actually having a nice rebound year so far. But I think there's something to the fact that the hitting background's not great right now in Skydome. And on top of that, I think that we probably overrated them for the years that they were playing in the alternate ballparks.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was not really in on these guys. Actually, sneak preview tomorrow's Yahoo article about trading my sell low after last week was Corbin Carroll. this week's is Bo Bichette, is try to use his name value. I think you can make a trade offer in a Yahoo league saying, hey, this guy's in his prime. He's 26. He has a career, whatever, about 300 hitter. But when you look a little further, like, he's not a big base stealer anymore. He's got a few already this year, but he's not a big base stealer anymore. His power has actually declined each of the last 3 years, and it looks like it's going to decline for a 4th straight year this year.
Yeah.
He kind of looks like a singles and doubles hitter, and he's not really doing that lately. And the StatCast data isn't good on him either. The average exit velocity is down, the batting average is down. And you're right. The big change, I think, for some of these guys is Rogers Center is not the park to hit in that it was 7 years ago when Batista and Edwin Encarnacion and Josh Donaldson were raking there. Like, it's not. So not only did they have a really hitter-friendly season a couple years ago during COVID, but now you mentioned with Scott last night, actually, just kind of off the cuff when you were talking about on Sunday night, sorry, when you're talking about pitchers, you said something like, oh, this guy pitches in Toronto. I don't really love that. Actually, I think we need to start changing our thinking a little bit and saying, oh, that's fine. And maybe even preferable. At least maybe so. That he started last year. It played, I think, I forget off the top of my head, but I think it was like 24th for run scoring among ballparks. So last year it was quite pitcher friendly. I'm at least willing to call it neutral right now, if not
good of you.
And maybe a little pitcher friendly. So I would say, like, till we get this year's data, but I would say a little pitcher friendly, and that matters with these players who don't steal bases. So I'm not really optimistic on either one.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Who is it that I've got a Toronto start for coming up? I think it's in 2 weeks. It's so Simeon Woods Richardson gets a start tonight against the White Sox. And then next week he's a 2-stepper, and one of those is against Toronto. And so it was kind of one of those where, like, I mean, I don't love it. I still may be a little trepidatious there, but I'm a little nervous there about that.
Storyline though. How did Simeon Woods Richardson get to Minnesota? For Jose Barrios.
That's right.
So he was with Austin Martin in the Jose Barrios trade. So that would be he'll be fired up for that one to show the Blue Jays they shouldn't have traded him.
In their face. That's all right. Some positive outliers from in rounds 5 and 6, some early ones here. Shota Imanaga. Imanaga is someone who had his partisans going into draft day, but maybe not to the extent of this. He goes at 5.3.
Yeah, really high, but he's been like so good so far, and he's just a really tough one to read in the sense of, like, obviously he's been fortunate, but 28 to 3 strikeout to walk. And what's different with him compared to other pitchers who are off, like, so for example, Ranger Suarez went in the next round. We have a lot of data suggesting Ranger Suarez is just like an average pitcher, and then this year he's been great so far. So maybe something's changed, but we do have a lot of data saying he's an average pitcher. With Imanaga, we don't have any major league data to say that he's only an average pitcher. So far, he's come in and all he's done has been awesome. So I think maybe just from a common sense perspective, I'm more willing to buy into it. So to see him go ahead of Zach Gallen, who is day to day, admittedly, but Zach Gallen's was a 3rd, 4th round pick, and draft season's off to a fine start. He went ahead of Grayson Rodriguez, who you took in round 6, which I thought was a really good pick. He had a good start last night, and is off to not a great, but solid start this season. So to see Imanaga, and the other one, obviously, in round 5 that was super surprising to me was Ronel Blanco.
Yes.
Going that high.
I was going to get to that one there. I also was going to mention, just in passing, Marcell Ozuna, who I see is listed as outfielder in Yahoo. Is that right? I don't think he is.
Yeah, I think he is. Because Yahoo's like so liberal. I think almost everybody or almost everybody, I think everybody has a position in Yahoo. Not just
everybody is special.
Everybody gets some position. So what was really cool about last night, and this is where, like, I don't want to like be negative on the Blanco pick, but it was really cool drafting in late April because none of us really had, I think, firm projections we were working off of, and there's no ADP list. So, like, I have a hunch if there were 100 late April drafts, Ronel Blanco would not go in round 5 in very many of them. But what's cool about it is, like, everybody was kind of flying by the seat of their pants. Blanco has had a really nice start to the season, so you can't totally say that it's not possible, you know what I mean, for him to keep doing this. So I thought that part was just really fun. Every round you're trying to measure your preseason valuation of a player versus how he's done so far versus all the injuries. Holy moly, like, you could have filled your IL. I really noticed that difference for sure last night.
Yeah,
how many injured players there are right now.
And reminder too, in Yahoo, you have IL spots, so there is some strategy in when you take your injured player too. I took a late, like a second to last round flyer on Tristan Cassis just so I could park him in my IL because hard to find an upside on a hitter that late otherwise, especially hitters. Pitchers, I feel like you could take chances all day long.
Yes.
Where hitters, I mean, most of them get gobbled up anyhow. So I just want to go for some upside. So we'll go through these pretty quickly here. So, and then we'll look at our individual rosters because, it's all about us, right, Fred? So
that's right.
It is our podcast. Though. But Ronel Blanco at 5'6", earlier than I would have done, but I get it at the same time. Anthony Volpe was an outlier in my own right there. I did take him at 5'11", ahead of Bo Bichette, ahead of O'Neill Cruz. They went back to back right after me there. Although I think I saw a couple comments in the chat about people not happy that I took Volpe, so that made me happy. Mason Miller is like one of the fourth closer taken. That's something that definitely did change, but all you have to do is watch one outing for him and you can see why as far as that goes. Spencer Steer got a strange amount of disrespect, but not only is he hitting well, but you also get him at 4 positions. That's pretty handy to have. Ranger Suarez, we talked about him a little bit. He's not throwing super hard, but at the same time, you're getting some pretty decent results. I mean, not pretty decent. You're getting amazing results.
Amazing
what am I
so
talking
far.
about?
Number one pitcher earned auction value so far.
A couple guys that didn't. One guy that slid was Randy Arozarena to 6-1, but we're still in the 6th round here. But in that same round, Paul Goldschmidt still went in the 6th round, and that to me was a little bit of a surprise, just because. I mean, he looks like a 10th round player right now, a 12th round player right now to me.
Yeah, and this was the real challenge of this. So much more challenging than when we drafted in March. Is you're looking at guys like Goldschmidt, Arozarena, who's also off to an awful start, like we just mentioned, Vladdy and Bo Bichette, and you're trying to balance. Like, you don't have to absorb that awful start because the stats start tonight. But what are the odds that any of these guys turn it around tonight? And and you get what you thought you were getting. So it's how far. I think we were all looking in the Yahoo Draft, portal. They're still ranked by their ADP, which is mostly preseason drafts. So these guys would just sit at the top of the list for a round and 2 rounds, and then some guys would sit there for 3 or 4 rounds as we were going through the night. And it's like, when is too low, right? On some of these guys. Nico Horner, who went round 6, has 1 steal, I believe, so far this season. He had 1 steal yesterday. So going into yesterday, so like, how much can you take a base stealer who's got 1 steal at the end of April? So. But that you don't have to absorb that, but you need him to turn it around. So I thought that whole thing was it's a fascinating mind game that you don't deal with when you draft before the season because all the results are still static.
Yep, that's right. That's right. And the whole point about lack of ADP is just so good too.
It was really fun. Yeah.
Because you do. I mean, and I did one other time. I did Sirius XM had a draft where we counted the first 3 weeks, even the stuff that happened before us. I just called it the recency bias draft, and I cleaned up on that one because everyone was taking all these crazy outliers early on. And I just kept on getting, okay, you're going to give me this end of the 1st round player in the 5th round. I'll take it. Do that. I was a good solid 10 years ago. And not everybody that was doing the draft was like a full-time baseball analyst. I think they had some football analysts in there, maybe a couple of producers, things of that nature. But anyhow, but it was a good study in recency bias. Let's take a look at some full teams here, mine and yours. We'll do yours first. Team Zinkie here. You started off with Corbin Burnes, Tarik Skubal, Freddy Peralta, Aaron Nola, as we talked about. You added Ha-Sung Kim. You got Mr. RBI himself, Teoscar Hernandez. I love me some Teoscar. It's a 1-catcher league. You took an early catcher in Salvador Perez.
Yeah, a lot of the catchers, like we talked in March a lot about the catcher pool being deep, but a lot of the catchers who we thought were part of that deep catcher pool are off to really slow starts. So I'm trying to figure out, I was trying to figure out how much does that matter. Sal Perez is off to an awesome start.
Yes, he is.
Certainly seen him have an amazing season just a couple of years ago. So I decided to go for it. And when I had gone cheap on hitter and started with 4 pitchers, I was like, okay, one of the ways I'll compensate is I'm going to try to have like the best or one of the best catchers. And then I'll keep working on the other positions on waivers. So we'll see how it turns out.
You added a 5th starter in Bailey Ober in the 8th round. I love Bailey Ober, but is that overkill?
Just felt like
overkill, as you might say.
Overkill, yeah. I just felt like he was good value at that point, and you're right. When I was going to pick him, I was like, do I really need him as my fifth starter? But I just felt like the value on him, I had him better than all the starters in my mind, a lot better than the starters remaining. So I just went with it.
Bryson
We can
Stott,
trade in this league. So
and rumor has it is you like to trade.
that I would do that. Yeah.
Bryson Stott in the 9th round. Alexis Diaz, as you alluded to. Last night, Diaz gave up a run in the 9th to the Padres. Prior to that, he had retired 23 batters in a row. After that horrible start to the season, a horrible first game of the season, mind you, just one game. He was exquisite until that point. So, yeah, good value there. Isaac Paredes, you actually kind of broke my heart there. One thing I found, and this is pick 138 where you got Isaac, is I found that it was hard to find a good second baseman. Those filled up, those kind of evaporated pretty quickly. So I took I took some risks there later on. We'll get to that in a second. Willie Adames, Max Muncy. Here's where you're piling on the hitters. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. Oh, you took a stab at Garrett Cole. That's where he went. I had no idea. James Outman, Thairo Estrada, another second base guy. Paul Sewald, another injury guy coming back soon, probably, though had a tiny little setback. Masataka Yoshida. This is one of the guys I'm kind of trying to divest myself of because I felt like I overrated him coming into this season.
I call those guys the do nothings. Like they hit 275, but they kind of do nothing. But it was round 19, and he plays every day, and he will hit 275. So I do worry about power. So that pick worried me a little bit, just because I'm not going to get a lot of power from him. So I'm not sure if I'm light on power or not. Again, it's hard to figure that out for a draft that's happening during the season. But when I took, for example, Paredes and Max Muncy, like those were efforts on my part to try to make sure that I had some guys who generate almost all of their countings.
You got discounted power at the expense of batting average, basically.
A little bit. So I tried to balance it all out, right? And then because you're going to get warts in all these picks because I don't have the early hitters. So then Yoshida, again, is a counterbalance to those guys. So he's going to only hit a dozen home runs, but he's going to hit 280. So he was
always my average balancer. You're right.
Yeah, he balanced out. I almost took Luis Arias, actually, at one point during this draft. He went like a couple picks before I was going to pull the trigger on him. And again, it was to try to balance out some guys like Paredes and Muncy.
All right, real quickly, Nelson Velasquez, Brian Wu, Tommy Pham, Brian De La Cruz, Marcus Stroman, Brian Abreu, and David Robertson to wrap it all up for you. Was there anything that stood out for you?
The amount of injured pitchers that I could have taken. Like you could.
Yes.
So I took 3. We get 2 IL spots. So Cole's on the IL. I tried to take guys who would be back really soon. I almost took Taj Bradley too. He was like near the top of my queue when someone else took him. But Brian Wu is supposed to be back like next week. Paul Sewald, his setback isn't supposed to be very major, and he's a reliever. He doesn't have to build up. Like I think he should be back in a couple weeks. So we're gonna have more injuries. I'm gonna need those IL slots. So Garrett Cole, they're looking at right now the end of May, and I thought, okay, well, we'll see if I could get 4 out of the 5 months out of this draft, and maybe he doesn't make that, and I get 3.5 out of the 5 months. But we're talking about a legitimate first round player, so I was fine with taking him in round 15. But I could have drafted so many injured pitchers. Merrill Kelly, I really wanted at one point. He lasted forever. The not special injured pitchers definitely lasted forever, but like good. Merrill Kelly's good. Brian Wu's good, right? So. Anyways, that was one thing I noticed is compared to when we drafted in March, there are just so many injured players right now, especially pitchers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take a look at my roster real quick because, again, it's all about me.
It's all about us.
But here we go with my roster here. A little bit of a different roster construction. I go Gunnar Henderson, Yordan Alvarez, Logan Gilbert, Evan Phillips, back to hitter with Anthony Volpe. You mentioned my Grayson Rodriguez pick at 68. I was very happy with that little fist pump. People are saying aces were gone. I don't see a big difference between Brandon Webb and Grayson Rodriguez. In fact, I'll take Grayson over Webb.
I love that you just called Logan Webb Brandon Webb.
I know I didn't. Didn't I? I was hoping to skate past that and hope you didn't notice that.
No, it's a great throwback. I remember taking Brandon Webb in the first round one year. I do, in an NL only. I think I remember taking Brandon Webb in the first round of an NL only.
Yeah.
Like a really long time ago.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So yes,
22 win season. He
is better than Brandon Webb. I'll guarantee you he's better.
How about
than
this? Brandon Webb, for people who I know a lot of people listening to these like played fantasy baseball in time. Brandon Webb had a 22 win season and threw 4 more innings in his entire career.
Yeah.
That is a pretty remarkable fact. Anyways, go ahead.
All right. So Taylor Ward, again, this is some recency bias, but why not? He's hitting a great spot
Yep.
in the Angels order. He does
Yep.
run. He hits for power. I'll go for it there. I'm kind of happy with that, and we'll see if I should be happy with that. Took Raisel Iglesias, and there was another closer that went after that where I was kind of like kicking myself, like
Helsley, maybe.
no, I don't
Clay
kick myself
Holmes.
for Helsley. No, Clay, that doesn't bother me either.
Okay.
It was like at least a round later that I was.
Oh, okay.
It was kind of like that. There was a picture. I'm like, oh, why didn't I go that? Robert Suarez in the ninth, I think was
good. Yeah.
Similar value there, and maybe even someone in the 10th. Munoz went in the 10th. You got Diaz in the 10th. Not much difference between those guys and where I paid for my second closer in Iglesias. So, Jaron Duran, Vinny Pasquantino. You know, I'm friends of P, so I like Vinny Pasquantino though. No, it wasn't Iglesias I was kicking myself over. It was Reynaldo Lopez at 11,141 when I could have had Nick Lodolo like a round later, and that was one where I passed.
Especially after last night now.
I passed that up, and I passed up on Tanner Houck, who I absolutely love, and I probably should have gone that route instead. Scott was giving me a hard time about that because I think he's the one that got Houck, and I'm like, I love Houck. Anyways, but I did get Bryce Miller in the 13th round, and I thought that was a really oversight by the league. I don't think he should have been available that late. Told you about my struggles trying to find a second baseman. Edouard Julien, at least he hits for some power, has some speed. I understand that batting average is a problem, and he might not play much against lefties. Maybe that's actually okay. As a consequence, I got someone else second base eligible in Ryan McMahon in the 14th round too.
Yeah, I think that's, I don't know. Yeah, I think that's okay. Ryan McMahon at that point in the draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought so.
Like he's hitting 300 so far, but super high BABIP. He's probably going to go back to being like a 240 hitter, but he can hit. Ryan McMahon is going to get you 20 to 25 homers, a handful of steals, and probably hit 250. It's fine at that point in the draft.
Yeah. Here's a buy low for me. Christian Encarnacion.
Very much so. Yeah. I thought about it.
Yeah. He was hovering for a while especially because, your default is listed on like ADP or early initial ranks. And so it hasn't adjusted to his slow start, let alone his hand injury right now. But I thought it was worth like, okay, I'll park him on my bench for a while until I know his hand is fine and we'll go after it there. Yeah. I still believe in the talent. I believe in the Reds roster. I believe in the Reds ballpark. I believe these are all good things. So that's what I wanted to do. Jordan Hicks. Okay. Maybe it's real. Maybe I was wrong on not getting
circle. Yes. Yeah. You have come full circle on him.
Yeah.
Cause you were down on Jordan Hicks.
I was.
We were both. I'm not telling you. We were both down.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
What if I told you Ryan Jeffers by the earned auction value tool is the number 5 catcher right now?
You love Ryan Jeffers. You've loved him before the season started, and you still love him. And I'm glad that you drafted him because he's off to an awesome start. And it's not BABIP driven. His BABIP's about, I think it was 308 or something like that. So it's like maybe a little high for catcher, but not very high. So this is a big change in Ryan Jeffers last year and this year. He's all of a sudden hitting for average. Like before that, he was like a 200, literally like a 200 hitter. The last 2 years, 276 last year, 294 this year. Last year came with a high BABIP. So I thought we were going back down to like a 220 hitter, but so far we are not. So if he keeps this up, like amazing value pick. Like if he hits 20 or 25 home runs with a high batting average, amazing value pick at this point.
And I'll say this, catchers were I thought there were plenty of late value catchers.
There were. Yeah.
It's a one catcher league. And this is where you got to know, like I will never take an early catcher in a one catcher league. I wouldn't say never, but very infrequently am I going to take an early catcher in a one catcher league. Just because I think they're, especially in the current environment where I feel like there's 15 catchers that I like.
Yeah, for sure. I did have second thoughts about my Sal Perez pick. He's off to such a great start that I decided to roll the dice and that maybe we're at the outset of another, like one of this special Sal Perez seasons. But you're right. When you see Cal Raleigh and Logan O'Hoppe and those guys were available in like the last 3 rounds, Gabriel Moreno. Yeah, I definitely thought that maybe I could have just waited.
Yeah, I think so.
For sure.
I think you could. By the way, answer the question. This is not head-to-head. We dabbled with the idea going head-to-head and decided not to do so this year. Others that I took here real quick: Brandon Marsh, Seth Lugo, Reed Garrett. I don't know what to do with Reed Garrett because Diaz exists, but I mean, how can you ignore what he's doing on the mound? He's so good.
Yeah, and in a league like this one that'll have an innings cap and daily roster. In daily roster move leagues, Reed Garrett is much more valuable because you will get all of Reed Garrett's innings this year and all of your starters innings. So that's something that's just a nuance of playing in Yahoo or playing in a daily transaction league. Different. Reed Garrett is more valuable in this league than he is in an NFBC. By the way, you picked 3 guys there who have, like, I like to see trends in my picks, your picks, anyone's picks, but 3 guys there who have boosted their value tremendously since the start of the year. Like Brandon Marsh, way up since the start of the year. Seth Lugo, way up since the start of the year. And I was close to getting Lugo. Like when you took him,
he hovered in my queue for rounds.
Yeah, Lugo is just a tough one in the sense of the ratios are so good, the strikeout rate is so poor. So, like, what do we believe, or where do we sit on the fence? So where you took him is like we're all kind of sitting on the fence, and not like round 19 for a guy with an ERA in the ones. Totally fine.
Sure, why not? I know he doesn't strike people out, but I still think he's good, and he was good last year. Reed Garrett, I don't know where to value him, but how can you make a bad pick at round 250? I mean,
in this league, I think if we had more time to think about the nuances of this league, like I think the guys like Reed Garrett would have gone earlier.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think we have the innings cap that we have had.
We may not, but even with the daily transactions, it just means that you can have Reed Garrett in your lineup all the time, not inexpensive. Like daily lineup moves means you can have him in your lineup, and it's not coming at the expense of a starter. That's the problem in the NFBC leagues: is you put Reed Garrett in your lineup, and you get the great ratios, but you're only going to get 3 or 4. Eventually, he's going to cool down a bit. You're only going to get like 3 strikeouts, and you lose the starter. So the opportunity to put a starter in your lineup in this league, you get the best of both worlds. So the Reed Garretts are quite valuable.
Yeah, you'll see the back end of my draft is all about guys that are on the upswing. Jacob Young already has 12 stolen bases. Tyler Freeman has improved his outlook. He qualifies at 4 positions too. Christian Javier, I don't think he should have lasted this long also. No. He's got the sore neck, but this is not like a long-term injury from what I can read. I think he's coming back very soon. So I'll take the haircut here.
Yep, I think that was another example of there just being so many injured pitchers that we can all take. Like, but you're right. We almost shouldn't have looked at him as injured because he's going to be back very soon. That's how I looked at Brian Wu. It's like not really injured because he's going to be back very soon. But I think there were just like people were getting overwhelmed with how many ILs you can take in this draft.
Well, one thing I did, one bit of thing I did is I had an open tab on just the earned auction value page, and
me too.
I'm scrolling down the pitchers, and he's still there. He's still there.
Yep.
Dane Dunning, he's striking guys out this year.
Yep.
Why not? Cassis was just there's no hitting left. There's very little hitting upside left. I'll take an injured hitter. I won't take the injured pitchers otherwise there. And finally, a slumper in MJ Melendez. Sneakily also has catcher eligibility still left over from last year.
Yeah, so if you take Melendez out of that and Casas in your last rounds, you're right that there's a real run for you of players who have either overachieved or are breaking out, and we'll find out what happens later. So if you were to win this league, we might look back and say maybe the lesson learned is we need to put more stock in April stats, and guys like Lugo, Dunning, right? These guys who are off to great starts, Jacob Young, like maybe we should be boosting them up and believing in them more at the end of April. So that'll be interesting. And I'm sure I haven't combed through everyone's roster, but there's probably someone who from about round 15 to 20 did the exact opposite and took a bunch of players who have fallen a lot. And we'll see how their team ends up.
Yeah. Once again, I'm posting the link to the full results in the chat there if you are streaming along live with us here. And I'll put in the episode description as well if you're listening after the fact. Question from Senior Softball Games. Is a 12 league 4 bench spots, 60 moves a tough league? Of course it can be. If you've got tough players in your league, no matter the format, it can be a tough league. No format makes the league easy. You might have a league full of all-stars, but a league full of all-stars can be tough too, especially when you have moves limitations. You have to make tough decisions on slumpers. You have to when you have a moves limitation league, what do when do you pull the trigger on a slumping guy that's in the taken in the 8th round? You may be wise to cut him in that league. So all leagues can be tough. That's my
Yeah,
takeaway.
I don't like it when people say like, "Oh, you're in a 10-team league, like those are easy." Well, it's not easy. It's not easy to win it if the
Right.
other 9 people are good. Like a
Right.
hard league is the one where the other managers are good, and an easy league is the one. I don't care if your league's 15 teams. If the other managers don't know what they're doing, it's an easy league. So it's
Right.
how the other managers are. It's not size league because, as you mentioned, the bar for lineup inclusion in a shallower league is it matters. The fact that like which player is Luis Arias playable, is Yoshida playable, is Paredes playable, like in a shallow league, like all those things matter. It's just the bar is just at a different point. So
I will say the deeper the league you're in, the gulf in ability is more exposed. So say if
right,
you're in a 15 team, say if you're in a 12 team AL only league versus a 12 team mixed league, and you're in a league full of dunces in an AL only league, well, you're going to almost certainly clean up there because you know the player pool so much better. Yeah.
yes, I was gonna say ability. You're talking about like your depth of knowledge of major league rosters
Right.
and
Yeah.
play and situations, right? So, which still doesn't mean you have great fantasy baseball playing ability, but your ability to go deep in knowing all the
Yeah.
rosters
That'll get exposed a little bit more, but I think that's the only other difference there. But
and those deep leagues are more the draft. It's more the draft,
yeah,
right? Like there's
exactly.
less you can do. That's the other thing. These like a 12-team league with small benches or a 10-team league, they're very dynamic. Like your ability to pivot to new closers, hot starters, all these things matters way more. I've played Tout NL, you've played Tout AL. Like the waiver wire doesn't take very long a lot of weeks because there's nothing there.
Yeah.
So
I will say this, if you're playing in a sharks and guppies league and you're a shark and your league allows for trading, don't take terrible advantage of the guppies.
all the guppies.
Don't, it ruins it for everybody else. And it leaves that other person feeling burnt. They're never going to trade with you again. They'll probably drop the league. Don't roast these guys. We're trying to bring more people into our leagues anyhow in the first place. So, you can still win trades without killing people on that, basically is what I'm getting at there. Try not to abuse that advantage. I think there's there should be some responsibility in that. Especially the more the casual league is, obviously if you're in a $1,000 entry fee league with your law firm buddies, it might be different than when you're playing in a friends and family league there, where the entry fee is like $20. So, but hey, don't take advantage of people. Don't destroy people. I feel strongly about this because they're not going to learn. They're going to quit. That's the thing. And you want people, especially if they're your friends, you don't want them to quit on this because, oh, you just wanted me in this league so you could take advantage of my lack of knowledge on that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Anyways, that's just my thought there. Okay. Any other thoughts before we sign off for today, Fred?
No, I think that was a really good rundown of that draft. Like I said, I like full credit to Scott when he sent out the initial email about the draft. I was kind of like, it's not draft season's over. Like I'm not, but once we got into it last night, I was like, this is really cool. So for anyone listening who's, if you have friends who would want to sign up and do something like that now, even if there's no money in it, you're just like, I was so immersed in last night's draft in comparison to when we draft in March. When we draft in March, I've got my list, I've got a plan, I've got ADP, and truthfully, depending on how fast the draft's moving, like I can do other things during the draft a little bit, and especially in the early rounds. Last night, I found I was totally locked in. Because my mind was constantly racing, trying to evaluate these players kind of without a safety net. It was way more fun than I thought it was going to be.
I agree. Now we'll see when I'm trying to manage said team throughout the course of the year. We have twice weekly fab. It's better than first come, first serve pickups that we used to have. So there is that.
Yep.
It is great because when we write and talk about it, it's the only draft going on right now too. We're not competing for a lot of other bandwidth. I was a little distracted last night because we had Major League Baseball on. We had hockey playoffs, NBA playoffs. I was doing a video segment with VSiN during our draft at one point in time. So if I got down to the wire on my pick a couple times, that's why. Because it's hard to I got to make a pick while I'm talking on air.
And our draft moved fast. Like we did that entire draft in I think about an hour and 40 minutes. So
yes, which is a beautiful thing. I mean, I do like that.
Yeah.
But I agree. I was like, I'll do it because it's our buddy P&L organizing it. Scott's organizing it. So I'll do it. But it turns out I'm glad I did. I'm
Yeah,
really glad I did.
sure.
So that's all I have to say about that too. Good stuff, guys. Thanks for indulging us talking about our rosters. Just hopefully you got some value on the kind of in-season values. That's what we're kind of going for there. And hopefully you enjoyed it. Those who are in the chat with us, we really appreciate you joining us in the stream. If you enjoyed it, please do us the favor of hitting that like and subscribe button there. Give us feedback, give us comments. And if you like what we have to say, please check out RotoWire, rotowire.com/pod. You can get a free peek behind the paywall there. No credit cards required. We've been doing this free trial thing for over 20 years in various formats, whether it's on our radio show, on our podcast, even on Twitter. We have ways to do that too. But we think you'll like the site. So rotowire.com/pod, free trial. Check out everything that we have there, and hopefully you'll want to subscribe. Thanks to our friends at Prize Picks and Vivid Seats for sponsoring us. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.